The second ever Elimination Chamber comes to us from Phoenix, Arizona, with 16,000 in attendance for a fun SummerSlam. 10 months after the classic original, August 2003 was peak ruthless aggression era in many fans' minds. It was when SmackDown overtook Raw for the first time as the better received show. While SmackDown was the more indie, artsy fartsy, Oscar bait movie, Raw was the action Hollywood blockbuster like a Transformers or Avengers movie, which perfectly describes the main event of the show, the Elimination Chamber. The sequel to the critically acclaimed Survivor Series 2002's original, this chamber match was much more random than the previous one. I mentioned in the previous installment of this series that the competitors of the original chamber match were cherry-picked by Bischoff. This was again thrown together by Austin, who was the sheriff of Raw at the time. The word going around that there were a lot of politicking going around behind the scenes at this time. I know, shocking. Triple H was dealing with a groin injury, and Vince wanted to keep the title on him, forcing him to compete, and Hunter was a trooper. He would go along with it. Kevin Nash was leaving. This was his last televised match. He was supposed to have a hair versus hair match at SummerSlam with Jericho. The match ended up being pushed up to the go-home episode of Raw. Orton was supposed to face Shawn Michaels. The match ended up being postponed to Unforgiven the following month. And Goldberg didn't want to lose clean. And due to his backstage attitude, well, that's the reason we got what we got. Hardly a punishment, but it did derail his momentum. Three of the six superstars that competed 10 months prior in the barbaric structure, Chris Jericho, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H, are joined by Kevin Nash, Randy Orton, and the undefeated Goldberg. Y2J and the winner of the first Elimination Chamber, HBK, start the match. Jim Ross says a stupid line, and I quote, Chris Jericho, who grew up idolizing Shawn Michaels, who literally dominated the latter of the 80s and most of the 90s. End quote.
I've said it many times that he grew up idolizing Shawn Michaels, who literally dominated the latter 80s and most of the 90s in his storied career.
When Shawn was only on top for 2 years before his 4-year absence, that was a really stupid line by JR to point out. But hey, maybe it was him, maybe it was fed to him. Either way, it doesn't change the fact it was a stupid line. Shawn looks great. He grew out his hair and he's got his classic zebra tights, the ones that he wore when he faced Stone Cold back in King of the Ring 97, which is an underrated match. Shawn and Chris barely do anything to really get the crowd going. The fans have been hot throughout the night, with fun matches and a show-stealing performance from Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle. Randy Orton is out next, runs wild, hitting a crossbody on Jericho. This was Green Orton, who was a magnificent athlete, but refused to slow down to really maximize his minutes. You can tell right away that this match was way too big for him. Despite debuting in the main WWE shows a year prior, and only being in the business for 3 years, he spent most of his main roster call-up at this point rehabbing a shoulder injury. If this was 97 Shawn Michaels, he would have eaten Orton up and spit him out. But both Jericho and Michaels were professional enough to help guide Orton through through his first chamber match. The match continues at a steady pace. Nothing flashy happens until Kevin Nash comes out next, and he starts manhandling his opponents. Jericho bleeds after Nash lawn darts him a couple of times into the chain link fence. Nash is about to hit his signature jackknife powerbomb on Jericho. Shawn super kicks Big Daddy Cool. Jericho jackknife covers Big Sexy for the shocking 3 count. Nash is the first to be eliminated after spending less than 2 minutes in the match. The fans barely react, and as a kid watching this match, I hated this part because I would have loved, as much as I think a lot of people would have, seen Nash slugging it out with Goldberg. You have this giant monster buzzsawing through 4 men before getting to the meat cleaver that is Goldberg. That's what was teased in the Go Home episode of Raw, when Nash closed the show standing tall over Goldberg after hitting him with a jackknife powerbomb. So Goldberg should have gotten his revenge, and a classic Clash of the Titans. Triple H is out of his pod next, and as soon as the door opens, he's greeted by a super kick from the Heartbreak Kid. Flair throws his jacket and is going crazy outside of the chamber. Nash shakes off the effects of the sweet chin music. He hits his finisher on all 3 legal competitors before storming out of the structure. Shawn crawls for a pin attempt on Jericho, and Chris is able to save himself with a rope break. Damn it, Katie Vick. Why are rope breaks a thing in this match? Goldberg enters and he kills everyone. Spears and jackhammers for everybody. He almost kills Jericho by spearing him through a pod. The glass didn't shatter at first contact, but Goldberg forces himself through with Jericho through it. In 2 minutes, Goldberg eliminated Randy Orton, Shawn Michaels, and Chris Jericho. The fans are going crazy. Everyone was ready for Goldberg to shoot to the top 4 months into his WWE debut. Flair helps Triple H by sealing him in a pod away from the wrath of Goldberg. But that quickly fails when Goldberg busts through with a piston-like right hand and a front kick that shatters the glass. Goldberg then proceeds to beat up the game. Throwing him into the cell a few times, Hunter is busted open. Goldberg gets ready to hit the spear. As he runs for it, the cerebral assassin hits Goldberg with a sledgehammer that Flair just passed to him. Triple H pins Goldberg 1, 2, 3, and he retains his World Heavyweight Championship in the second ever Elimination Chamber match. Evolution then proceeds to beat down a bloody Goldberg. They handcuff Goldberg to the chain wall. Hunter gets one more shot on Goldberg. Triple H celebrates his retention with his comrades as the fans are completely deflated. SummerSlam was supposed to be the second biggest event of the year, yet this one ended like an episode of Raw, which is one of the reasons why this match is almost forgotten. As a main event and as a chamber match, it wasn't a so bad it's good match. It was just a mediocre match with a weak finish. The spot with Goldberg running wild was cool, but not enough to save the match. The premature Nash elimination, the prodding start, and the weak finish puts this match at the bottom of my current list of Elimination Chamber matches. I give it 2 3/4 stars. Not the worst, but definitely a huge drop from its predecessor. Orton and Shawn could have still happened earlier in the night, a way to put over the new talent. Kane and Shane could have taken their place. Kane and Nash could have had that slugfest. Shane could have done a crazy move off the top of one of the pods. And if you wanted to beat Goldberg, Kane was at his most dominant at this point. I would argue this was the scariest monster WWE ever had, with this version of Kane at this time. And being the one to give Goldberg his first loss isn't something that people would have rejected, I think. Or you could have saved it as a Survivor Series staple, with the return of Batista playing a big part in costing Goldberg the match and build to a clash of the two powerhouses. So this was my review of SummerSlam 2003's Elimination Chamber. Let me know, where does this chamber rank on your list? A 2-year gap is between the second and third chamber. Was it worth the wait? You'll find out soon.